talking to the Republicans, even so much as going up to their float. And I was shaking hands at their float, and their eyes were as wide as saucers. They had never seen a congressional Democrat campaigning on 4th of July, much less a combat vet and a businessman running proudly to represent them. But as I left that float, and I was walking back along the parade route, a woman took me by the elbow and she walked away so no one could hear. And she leaned in close and she said, "Young man, why can't you be a Republican?" And I said, "Man, right there, you have to understand, labels are wearing thin. Your sense of values, we have more in common than that which separates us. And military service to country, and the 2 tours I did in Iraq, that's not a Republican value or a Democratic value. Those are American values." And ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing this fall, what we're doing here today, what we're doing supporting Beto is reminding everyone we have far more in common than that what separates us. We will not let labels divide us. We will not let negative campaigning divide us. First and foremost, we are Texans and we are Americans. Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Kopser. I want to represent you and all of you in Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. Wonderful. Beto is in the house. And his family is in the house. So just a couple more minutes, and we'll hear from our senatorial candidate. A couple things. I also wanted to recognize Stephanie Phillips, who's running for Texas House 73. Stephanie, where are you? There she is. This event took a lot of coordination. I want to thank a few people. Dawn already thanked a couple. So Warren and Allison and all the staff here at 290 Vinery, thank you so much. We couldn't have done this without you. Please give them your business, whatever you can. Also want to thank the Johnson City Police Department. And we hope you do not give them your business. I also want to thank Bonnie Baskin, the founder of the Science Mill, who donated a parking lot across the road. Oh, 300 Barbecue, they're down 20 minutes in Blanco. Go visit them. Chris Taylor, our musician today. You haven't had much of a chance to hear from him yet, but he's staying around, so when we're done, the party begins. Check him out, both his music and his art, at ChrisTaylorWorld.com. ChrisTaylorWorld.com.
Sharon.
I want to thank all of Beto's volunteers who've been on the road for like 6 years now, 6 months maybe. We all hope they sleep really well on November 7th. I want to thank my co-conspirator, Joyce Humble. None of this is possible without her. And finally, I want to thank all the wonderful Blanco County Democratic Party volunteers. Just look for the sweaty people wearing the white t-shirts. So, things are changing in Blanco County, if you haven't noticed already, because of leaders like Don Capra and our next speaker. We have a new way of thinking about things around here, and we're going to keep that going. We're going to elect some Democrats to represent us in the general election this year. So with that, it is my honor to introduce the president of the Johnson City Chamber of Commerce, Lon Yeager.
Okay. Well, this is a tough act to follow with Joseph and Aaron. I don't know, just bear with me, please. But quite a speech there. I've been a registered Republican most of my life. But I've never voted along party lines, and I've always supported candidates based solely on their positions on the issues. It was an easy choice for me in supporting Beto, because his values His values line up with what I believe in and what's right for Texas and right for our country. He is easily the best choice for senator from Texas. He represents the change that is so badly needed in Texas and in the entire country. Recent polls indicate that a Beto victory really could and will happen. A Texas Lyceum poll conducted just last month shows the race to be a virtual dead heat. A very recent Quinnipiac, I think I pronounced it, it's either Quebec or Quinnipiac. University poll shows Beto with the momentum, having cut the incumbent's lead nearly in half. Ted Cruz told the Dallas Morning News recently, quote, "There have been polls all over the place, but there's no doubt that the far left is energized and angry, and that is reflected in the record-breaking fundraising Congressman O'Rourke is seeing. Yes. We are taking the campaign very seriously," unquote, as you should, Ted. Yes, citizens on both sides are energized and angry. Trump's 9-point victory in Texas in the 2016 presidential election was the weakest performance for a Republican presidential candidate in over 20 years. That same Lyceum poll shows that Texans feel differently about Trump now since the election, with 52% saying they disapprove of his performance. The Republican Party is rife with discontent. We need to capitalize on that sentiment. In 2016, 55% of eligible Texans showed up to vote in the presidential election. Good enough for the state to be ranked 47th in the country. Mm-hmm. Come on.
That's not good.
28% of those surveyed for the study about why they didn't vote said they didn't like the candidates or the issues. Well, who's more likable than Beto?
Nobody.
Certainly not his opponent. So we need to get more voters registered and get those voters to vote. Texans are ready for a change, and Beto is just the man for that change.
How's everybody doing? Good to see you. Really, really good to be with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ron, thank you for the introduction and for supporting us and helping to organize this and to make it happen. Terry and Joyce and Mayor Don Capra and everyone who brought everyone else together, thank you for your work and dedication to doing something great, not just for Blanco County, not just for Texas, but at the time that it could not matter more for this country, right? We're all coming together for this country. For Aaron and Stephanie, two outstanding candidates for state representative for Texas. Thank you for being out here today, for campaigning, for connecting with your fellow Texans. Joseph Kopser, who would make an outstanding colleague in the United States Congress. Thanks to you for your military service, for your dedication to this country, and for serving again as a candidate. And it just would not be right in Texas for us to come together and to talk about the future of this country, our democracy, the things that we care about most, to be here with one another drinking some wine without a musician to keep us happy and to keep us company. Chris Taylor, thank you. Really appreciate what you're doing and your contribution to this campaign as well. Thank you so much. Perhaps more than anything else, I love the fact that Ulysses, our 11-year-old, Molly, our 10-year-old, and Henry, our 7-year-old, are with us here on the road, and that they and my wife Amy both heard Lon say, "Who could be more likable than Beto?" You guys, I just want you to remember that over the next 94 days as we really test one another's patience. But they've been absolutely amazing, absolute troopers on the road. We've been on the road now for 7 days, just this trip, a year and a half altogether during the campaign. And just since we left El Paso, roughly this same time last week, we've been to Fort Davis From Fort Davis, we went to Fort Stockton. From Fort Stockton to Pecos. From Pecos to Odessa. We woke up the next morning in Seminole and had an outstanding town hall meeting there. From Seminole, we went to Lubbock. From Lubbock to Muleshoe, and had a great conversation with those that we want to represent and want to serve in Muleshoe. That night, we drank beers with our fellow Texans in Amarillo, and just had a great group of people just like this coming together for the future of our country. The morning after, we were in Pampa, Texas for our second visit in that community. Y no me importa how much they voted for Donald Trump last time, it might have been close to 90%. They're our fellow Texans, our fellow Americans. Regardless of whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents or they haven't voted, they are deserving of our respect, of our attention, of being heard, of being served, of being fought for, and being represented. And so we showed up in Pampa, Texas, and had a great conversation. And not far from us was the ghost of Woody Guthrie, who worked in the drugstore in Pampa, Texas, bought his first guitar in Pampa, Texas. Pampa, Texas served as the inspiration for many of the American masterpieces that he would create over his lifetime, helping to define for us and the rest of the world who and what it is that we stand for, whether it is a guitar that takes down fascists, or whether it is somebody who stands up for this land, which is our land, right? This is for every single one of us. Y'all means all of us. Going to Childress and Wichita Falls, waking up the next day and at a theater in Graham, Texas, for the second visit to Graham, Texas. Folks driving in from Palo Pinto County and other places, distant and far, to come out and come together, not for a candidate, and certainly not for a political party, but for one another. And the energy in those places is never about me, the candidate. It's not about the party. It's about people being together and being thrilled and energized and electrified that their fellow Texans are coming out together when everything is on the line. From Graham, we drove to Abilene, Paramount Theater. 800 people came out to greet us in the middle of the day in Abilene. Finished in San Angelo, Texas, at another great Beers for Beto event. There's a theme here. There's a little bit of alcohol at every event. I want to make sure that we're happy while we're together. And then lastly, that next morning, we went to a town hall in Ira, Texas, part of Pecos County as well. And again, maybe, Amy, how many people came out? 12? 15? But those 12 and 15 people, regardless of how they vote, and considering some of the questions I was asked and some of the statements that I made, we may not be on the same side on every single issue. We may not be on the same side when they go to the ballot box on the 6th of November, but we're in the same boat, in the same state, in the same country, and we can have a civil conversation with one another. Treat each other with dignity and respect. And that is what is missing from this country right now, and Texas is bringing it back. So thank you for welcoming us and making us feel so good right now. We were in Kerrville at the start of the day. We had a town hall in Del Rio last night and drove into Kerrville. Just an absolutely gorgeous drive through the hill country. Amy and I kept interrupting the kids and whatever they were reading, whatever iPad game they were on, to look out the window and to take this in. It was absolutely stunning. Feel so lucky, so fortunate just to be alive and to be on the planet at this moment. Feel so grateful to be an American, the greatest country on the face of the planet still. And it's up to us to decide if she will be going forward for the next 242 years as we have been for the last 242 years. A quick stop in Fredericksburg, where we met up with folks who caravanned with us on the way in today to Johnson City. To my friends in Fredericksburg who know something about wine, thank you for welcoming us and joining us on the road. Another ghost that is never far from any part of our travels in Texas is that of Lyndon Baines Johnson, who we have seen in every single part of the state. And when we were in San Marcos, Amy and I went out there maybe a year and a half ago at Texas State, before then Texas Teachers, where Lyndon Johnson studied to become a teacher. And the last person in line to shake my hand that day may have very well have served with Joseph at one point or another, introduced himself, and it was only when I was shaking his hand that I realized that he had lost that hand and his arm and his leg while serving this country in Afghanistan. And he said, I want to tell you something else. The reason I'm here, and perhaps before I considered myself a Republican or independent of party politics, not going to get involved in this stuff, but the reason that I'm going to work my tail off for you is I saw the consequences of what we're up against. Because not only did I lose part of me in Afghanistan, but in 2013, when the junior senator from the state of Texas shut down the federal government for 16 days, I lost 4 buddies in Afghanistan. And because the Department of Defense could not process their death and burial benefits, initially they were unable to fly out and greet the bodies of their sons who had paid the ultimate price. Those parents wanting to pay their last respects. And but for a philanthropist who stepped in and funded their ability to be there, this government would not have met its most minimal obligation to those 4 men who had served this country so nobly and so bravely, so that so many others would not have to. And he said that is the consequence of this country failing to be big, to be bold, to be strong, to be confident, to be there for every single one of us. And what he said is that I see in this campaign, and not just you, but everyone who's coming together at that time is San Marcos, is that we are for everyone, everywhere, every single day. And we never give up on one of our fellow Americans. We never leave somebody behind. We're there for them whenever they need us, especially when they have served us. And I thought about Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was larger than life and left an imprint and an impression not just on Texas, not just Johnson City, of course, but this country and our legacy and our history and the heritage that each of us has the opportunity to be the match for at this moment. Lyndon Johnson would have got that young veteran's comments, and it would have done what it did for me. Drive him to make sure that we're there for everyone in every place. When we drove into Cotulla, Texas, in LaSalle County, there's a mural. If you've been there, you've seen it. And it's of Lyndon Baines Johnson and his high school class from 1927. And he went to that community, teaching a classroom of young boys and girls who otherwise might not have been able to get an education, but for our investment in one another and in public education and world-class public school teachers like Lyndon Baines Johnson. And they remembered his contribution to that community in the mural that was there, in the young man who had graduated from that high school class who ran the pharmacy on the main street in LaSalle County, Cotulla, Texas, going into the courthouse, meeting the county judge. And as we're touring that historic courthouse, and I bend over to get a drink out of the water fountain, he says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm not sure that the water in LaSalle County is safe to drink. There are 48 water systems in the state of Texas where it's not safe for your kids or your member of Congress or your candidate for U.S. Senate to drink the water out of the water fountain or at the tap in your home. Lyndon Johnson understood that investment in one another means investing in communities, in infrastructure, in the oversight and accountability for those who would pollute our water, pollute our air, and pollute our soil. He understood that this environment is something we never get back. We have one chance to keep her, and we should never lose her. And that investment in infrastructure and in one another was brought home when I was in Silverton, Texas, because I had been in Blanco County, in fact in Blanco City, at the Red Bud Cafe in February. And I had met Mayor Capra, and she had told me that many parts of Blanco County cannot reliably get online.
This is ridiculous.
Try finishing your education, try looking for a job, try starting a small business, try finding a date on Tinder tonight if you cannot get on the internet. It's near impossible. And if we want to be competitive, if we want every single one of us to live to our full potential, if we want to make sure we can contribute to our maximum capacity, every single one of us has to be treated with that respect. It means investing in our communities, especially these smaller communities. So I'm in Silverton, Texas, talking about this amazing mayor in Johnson City that I've just met, who has turned me on to the fact that half of rural Texas does not have reliable broadband internet. And this gentleman interrupts me in the middle of my talk about broadband internet in the Silverton Public Library, stands up and he says, Beto, I was in first grade in 1937 when then Congressman Lyndon Baines Johnson worked with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on the Rural Electrification Act. It is only because of their leadership and their investment in our community, because no private business or corporation was going to invest in Silverton, Texas, was going to extend the infrastructure and the lines to make sure that I could read at night in first grade before I went to school the next day, so I could compete with those kids in Austin, in Houston, New York City, in Tokyo, anywhere in the world. We wanted Silverton on the map, and they took a chance on us. They invested in this community. And partisanship and politics are not important, but it was not lost on me that he said, from that day forward, you can better believe my daddy was a yellow dog Democrat.
Yes.
When we show up for one another, and again, party's not important, but when we show up for one another, people remember, and we have written off so many parts of Texas, and I know that because I've been to each one of the 254 counties of Texas, and I've met so many of our fellow Texans who have not seen a Democrat running for office come to their communities, and because they've been taken for granted by the other side, they're now not seeing Republicans who hold those offices showing up to be held accountable, to be responsive and be responsible to those constituents that they represent. We were in Archer City, in Archer County, a little bit earlier this year, and we were staying at the Spur Hotel. We wake up and we're walking across the street to Mern's Cafe, where we're going to have a town hall meeting that was just over the number of people that we saw in Iran, maybe 18, 20 people. 30 if you count the 10 innocents who were eating breakfast there when we first walked in. Before I can make it across the street and into the door, a gentleman stops me and he says, "Are you Beto O'Rourke?" And I say, I am. Who are you? And he says, "My name's Paul, and I've got to show you something." And out of a manila envelope, he pulls out a picture of his dad talking to Lyndon Baines Johnson, and the year is 1948. And Congressman Johnson is running for the Senate, and he has just dropped out of the sky in a helicopter that lands on the courthouse grounds in the Archer County Courthouse. And he's walked over to the American Legion Hall to listen to and try to understand those that he wants to represent before he ever asks for their vote. And Paul tells me, I've lived here my whole life. My dad lived here his whole life before me. And neither of us have seen, since 1948, a statewide Senate candidate from either party running here and listening to us in Archer City. You're the first in 70 years.
Wow.
And so we show up just like LBJ did for everyone, everywhere. And from there we went to Throckmorton, we went to Baird, we went to Coleman, we went to Stephenville, we went to Brownwood. We ended the day in Weatherford, Texas, where we had a packed house in the middle school cafeteria. And the precinct chair who helped to put the meeting together said, "Beto, I've never seen in the 20 plus years I've been doing this many people come out this far away from an election." And she said, "The best thing about it is that I do not recognize a soul in the place." Everyone, Republican, Democrat, Independent, non-voter alike, coming out, not for me, not for a political party, but for this country that we love so much. And it gives me every confidence in the world. I'm more hopeful than I've ever been. I'm more encouraged than I've ever been that this country's going to get right and that Texas is going to settle on the course. It's going to be us. All of us. We are going to make this happen. And who knows? We may be the ones to lead on some really big changes over the next 6 years. Remember, it was Lyndon Baines Johnson who declared a war on poverty. It was Lyndon Baines Johnson who shepherded through the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. It was Lyndon Baines Johnson who ensured that those who had worked every single day of their lives could look forward to a retirement where they could be healthy and well and live a life of dignity through the Medicare program. It was Lyndon Johnson who understood that that if you are too poor to be able to take care of yourself and earn enough to be able to see a doctor or a therapist or afford that medication that could literally save your life, we together will be there for you. What if in this same state, and these other folks don't know their history and they won't see it coming from us, what if we led the way to ensure universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care for every American, regardless of who you are, and every single place in this country? What if this state, which temporarily had lost its way and had become the least insured state in the United States of America? That's who we are today. We're the #1 provider of mental health care services in the state of Texas. Is the jail system in the state of Texas, where people are dying of the flu, like a young school teacher in Weatherford, Texas, that we learned about, dying of diabetes in the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet, whose taxpayers invested in the research and the innovations that help to fund the cures for the maladies that people are suffering and dying from, and living lives that are diminished and not even one half of what they could be if we gave them the help up front. Let me put this in perspective, and then you tell me who the real fiscal conservative is in this race. One day in that county jail that people get arrested on purpose to go to have their schizophrenia or their bipolar disorder or their depression treated costs you, the taxpayers of Blanco County, $60. $60 a day to keep someone locked up who does not have health care. For outpatient mental health care services, it costs the taxpayer of Blanco County $14.50. Do we want to invest in health care, or do we want to invest in jail time? I'm all about investing in one another and making sure that we're well enough to live to our full potential, to work, to pay taxes, to go to school, to raise our families, to create works of art and play music and bring out the power and joy in one another. And thinking about the legacy of LBJ and his time spent teaching school that left such a profound impact on him, what would he think about the fact that today in this state, we are taking care of our retired teachers like they're some kind of public enemy to us? They have not seen a cost of living adjustment in 13 years, which means functionally their income has not gone up, it has not stayed flat, it has decreased against inflation every single year. And this last year, their cost of health care doubled. While their income has gone down, their costs are going up. If you add to that the windfall elimination provision, which says if you worked at the 290 wine bar, or you worked anywhere in the private sector, paid into Social Security, then you decided you were going to enter public service by teaching in that classroom, being a therapist or a counselor or librarian in that school, we're going to punish you by ensuring that you do not receive 100% of the earned benefit that you paid into. Either teachers who were retired were getting filthy rich in the state of Texas and we had to put an end to this, or we do not have people in positions of public trust and power who care about those who ensure the strength and the confidence and the economic power of this state. Those are the retired teachers that we need to start taking care of and treating like the valuable resource that they are. And their younger sisters and brothers, their children, their sons and daughters who are in those classrooms right now, like LBJ was in Cotulla, Texas in 1927, why do we ask them to take on a second, sometimes a third job just to make ends meet? Why do we ask them to focus on a high-pressure, high-stakes, standardized test instead of unlocking that lifelong love of learning within the children before them? Why do we ask them to even consider packing heat when they go into that classroom or standing between an active shooter and the students that they love and teach to, despite the challenges that they face every single day? With problem students like Beto, who was in remedial algebra for 3 years, we want that teacher focused on me, making sure that I could do better, not teaching to that high-stakes test, not trying to find another job, not scrambling to make ends meet, not worried about whether she's going to be required to take weapons training and bring a firearm into that classroom. What if we paid teachers a living wage, allowed them to teach to the child instead of the test, showed them the respect that they have earned, had universal background checks and firearm purchases in the state of Texas, in every state in this country. And no matter how hard the decision, no matter how tough the political consequences, we start thinking about those generations that follow ours instead of our own career, our own election, the polls. It's why we do not have a pollster or a political consultant. None of them would allow me to say 90% of what I've shared with you already. We have played it too safe in this state. We've been too middle of the road, and none other than Jim Hightower reminded us the only thing you'll find in the middle of the road are yellow lines and dead armadillos. We are proud, confident, strong people, and we're going to start acting that way going forward. What if we were also the state? We happen to be the most diverse state in the United States of America. People choose Texas more than they choose any state in the Union. They choose this country more than they choose any other on the face of the planet. This is a pride of place that we should totally own and convert into leadership on one of the most contentious issues of our day and bring people together, Republicans and independents and Democrats alike, rewriting our immigration laws in our own image to reflect our natural advantage and value. That this is a place that people want to come and work and be with their families and contribute, not take from the American dream. What if we were the ones who reminded ourselves and the rest of the country that there'd have to be something god-awful and terrible in your life for you to scoop up your 4-month-old daughter, your 7-year-old son, your 12-year-old child, and travel 2,000 miles, the length of Mexico atop, not inside of a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, to bring yourself to the front door of the United States at the Texas-Mexico border, trying to claim asylum, seeking refuge and safety and security for that little girl that you risked everything, including your life for. Put yourself in her shoes. Imagine how bad things would have to be here for you to make the same decision. This country, built by refugees and asylum seekers and immigrants, has to stop taking kids from their parents, putting those children in Twin Cities and Korea, reuniting them as quickly as we possibly can, and understanding that when those children can make their lives here in this country, not only will they be better for it, we will be much stronger. Immigrants, I know you know this, commit crimes at a far lower rate than do native-born Americans. Immigrants, every city that I've gone to in this state is thriving right now because of immigrants. In the cotton gin in Roscoe, Texas, all 24 jobs worked by immigrants. No one born in Roscoe or Sweetwater or anywhere else in Texas is willing to do any of those days. Talking to a rancher in Marathon, Texas, who tells me, I will pay any hourly wage. You can name your hours, but I need someone here to help me fix fence on my ranch. Cannot find anyone in Marathon or Alpine or Fort Davis or Marfa to do that, but he can find people who are willing to come to this country and do the toughest, most back-breaking jobs like that one for the chance to be here